On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, we dig into what went right and what went wrong as the Toronto Raptors snatched defeat from the jaws of victory against the very good Oklahoma City Thunder.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, February the 5th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley, free of COVID just about, and glad to be back with you here for a full slate of shows this week. I've, of course, been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that don't work very well, at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the place to be, the Locked On Raptors Discord, baby. The link is in the description of the podcast. It's free to join, and we'd love to see you in there. It's the single best place to talk about the Toronto Raptors on the internet without getting screamed at by lunatics. It's fantastic. Come hang out. Again, free to join, link in the description of the podcast. You can also find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. It's much appreciated. You can also join us on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the little notification bell, and you get a heads up every single time the show is about to premiere, so you never miss a snippet of that sweet, sweet Locked On Raptors action. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's get to it. On today's show, breaking down a thrilling double overtime loss to the West-leading Oklahoma City Thunder for your Toronto Raptors. One of them wins and lessons type games, of course, of which there will surely be many down the stretch, and I'm sure we'll all get sick of saying that refrain. I believe originated by Ty Lue way back in the day. And here to break down this loss to the Thunder that at one point looked great. 23-point lead. Everything was hunky-dory. Then the Thunder do the thing and come back and are very good at basketball, et cetera, et cetera. Here to talk about it all is our pal, Big V, Vivek Jacob from Sportsnet and Cricket Canada. Big V, how's it going, pal?
It's going well. I mean, it was a very fun game.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And then, I think outside of that, had a good weekend. Caught up with some friends, caught up with some family, and ready to roll.
Love it. Yeah, by the way, we're just not going to talk about the Rockets game Friday. It was bad. We'll just put it down. We don't even think about that. It was terrible. No RJ doesn't count. IQ and Pirtle just getting back. Rusty doesn't count. It's fine. So, Big V, let's dive in here. Of course, a game where things went right, then things went wrong, and it seemed like things maybe were going to get back and finish right for the Raptors as they punched back as the Thunder went on a surge in the second half of this game. Of course, they couldn't quite close it. No finish whatsoever for the Raptors. Multiple chances to win this game at the end of regulation and at the end of the first overtime, and yet they could not convert. Big V, what was your biggest takeaway from this one? I guess maybe on the negative side of things. What was your biggest takeaway about why things went wrong for the Raptors? We'll get into what went right. We'll get into our good, bad, and but we should start with where it all fell apart for the Raptors late in this game as the Thunder came back from down 23.
If I had to look at the biggest reason why things went wrong, I'm almost wondering how much Darko was trying to do right in this one, right? beyond the first half, because I thought the first half was great in terms of the defensive scheme, and it was very Nick Nursey.
Sure.
And we saw, obviously, Shai get a lot of pressure, a lot of attention. Paint was packed. And you were disrespecting the non-shooters, Lou Dort, Josh Giddey. And so for me, what changed in the second half was when those guys started to get going, there wasn't a real change in strategy.
Sure.
And so I think that's where, you kind of had to heed the warning signs a bit and make adjustments and maybe show that respect to guys who were really starting to heat up. And once they, what was it? When they cut it to about 11, that's when, you knew it was like, okay, this is going to a bad place.
Yeah, that happens against the top team in the Western Conference. Sometimes they're going to make you feel like you're in a bad place. I'm feeling unsure of how to feel about the lack of a stark adjustment in the second half, because I think the reason they got out to their lead was doing precisely what they kept on doing in the second half, which was, all right, we're just going to let Josh Giddey do stuff and we're going to force him to hurt us. And if you look at the impact numbers, if you look at the shooting percentages, everything screams, let Josh Giddey beat you about this Thunder team, right? Especially when you don't have Jalen Williams, who's a 45% three-point shooter. You don't have Isaiah Joe, who's a 42% three-point shooter. Those guys combined for like 8 attempts a game. With those guys not on the floor, I thought it was pretty wise to say, all right, like Giddey Dort, you're going to beat us. Shai, you're not getting to your office. They did a pretty good job of keeping him out of the mid-range. This game, the Raptors completely walled off the paint. You mentioned it. It did lead to the Thunder having the 100th percentile game for three-point frequency of any team in the Cleaning the Glass database this season. 63 threes put up over the course of this one. So, maybe you'd like to find a little more balance there, but I didn't find that it was all that egregious to keep leaving Josh Giddey open, because all of the book on this season has suggested leaving that dude open is probably going to lead to good things. I think Alvin Williams made a good point. There was one Giddey 3 late in that game where there was just no contest whatsoever. Like Scottie rotated over to force the pass, and then just like no one rotated back over to the wing for Giddey. Like, you don't want to give him free ones. You want to at least make him feel you a tiny little bit if you're not going to earnestly guard them. But it's hard because like the sort of regression wave hit like a ton of bricks in that second half. Aaron Wiggins was a big part of this as well. Leaving a guy who's a north of 50% three-point shooter wide open a whole bunch. Maybe not the best strategy. Maybe, that's where you kind of adjust the scouting report a little bit. But to get beaten by Giddey for 24-6-6 after he has been one of the most damaging players in basketball this season per the impact numbers, I don't think it was all that bad of an idea. The other thing that went wrong in this game, I would say, is the closing sort of offense, the Scottie Barnes of it all, which I think we should probably address here. Weird finish for Scottie in this one, Big V. He kind of just was not really an active passenger down the stretch of this one. The 2 overtimes in particular. Obviously, the play that stands out is the end of the first overtime where they clearly draw something up to just get it in his hands and go to work. He sees Lou Dort for 1 second and says, no, thank you, and pitches it off to Gary Trent Jr., and he doesn't get up a good shot. Shai with the big block. What happened there? Well, this was a weird finish for Scottie Barnes, I thought.
So specifically on the play, I think, he may have seen a miscommunication on the switch is what I'm going to go with.
Sure.
I'm going to give Scottie the benefit of the doubt. And I think, initially it was Shai on him. And then, with the action, that's where he saw Dort for a second. And maybe he was thinking, oh, they're both on me. I'll kick it to Gary. But the Shai was right with Gary. So there wasn't really much of an advantage to be gained with the pass. And so I think, he should have probably attacked. And I think when the broadcast actually, they actually showed a clip of Scottie right after that, where he seemed to have that disappointed look of, oh man, I really should have just gone with it.
Sure.
So that's like a split second read, where, you can acknowledge that he made the wrong read, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and, not being like, oh my God, it's Lou Dort. I want nothing to do with this.
I mean, look, could I blame anybody for not wanting anything to do with that dude? No, but yeah, in that spot, maybe you'd like a little bit more aggression. Yeah, just the passiveness from Scottie, the sort of just standing in the corner. And I know that they ran a lot of the Quickley Pirtle pick and roll stuff down the stretch of this game, and that was a source of conversation. Oh, why isn't Scottie getting the ball? We're back to this thing where it has to be Scottie all the time, which I think is ridiculous. Like, I think they have multiple players who can go and create stuff in high leverage spots. That's a good thing. You should want, to quote our pal Dwayne Casey, multiple ways of skinning the apple. But to the point that I made earlier about the lack of balance in terms of allowing as many threes as they did in this game and sort of selling out as hard as they did, I think you got to find more balance there, right? You have to find ways to involve both Scottie and Quickley. I don't think there's been nearly enough tapping into what that 2-man game can be as like a really dynamic connection. Obviously, Yak is very valuable as a screener and a dive man and all that stuff. But it did feel like a little bit tilted towards Quickley. I don't think it's a bad thing in the grand scheme. And ultimately, this is what everybody who was pounding the drum to pick a direction, build around Scottie, trade Pascal Siakam was asking for. There are going to be learning experiences. There are going to be moments where things don't go very well in the Scottie Barnes is the number one guy experience. He's 22 years old. And whether it was pouting because he didn't get the last shot in regulation, which I don't think is true. If you look at the play that was set up there, he had all the runway in the world to go and just drive if he wanted to. He pitched it back, whatever. There was... he didn't look to me like he was notably dejected for not taking that last shot. Should they have drawn up a 3 for RJ Barrett? Maybe not. Get to the rim, something like that. But, I don't know if this is like, oh, you didn't give me the shot, therefore I'm not going to try an overtime type of thing. And if it is, like, that's a learning experience too. It's an adjustment period for him, for Quickley as a lead guard, kind of figuring out, navigating the balance of when am I looking for my own, when am I setting other guys up. And I think this is the exact type of learning experience type game that we can expect a lot of for the next little while with this team. And I think it's okay to have some failure. And I think you have to allow room for the failure because the path they've decided to walk is one littered with failure. It's a young team trying to figure stuff out. And ultimately, that's kind of where I come down to the Scottie Barnes thing. Was it a perfect finish for him? No. Would I have liked to seen him, exercise more aggression in the overtime? Absolutely. Did he also seem totally gassed after playing 48 minutes? 100% he did. And so I don't know where to sort of put the blame on, was it his tiredness? Was it him pouting? Was it, all sorts of different things coming together? One way or another, it's something he can learn from. And that is what this whole thing is supposed to be about. So I can't get that mad about it, Big V. Any sort of thoughts there before we move on?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on like this all being part of the growth. I think we can also acknowledge that, yeah, okay, even when you don't have the ball and you're in the corner, you can find ways to get yourself involved and cut to the basket or, try to create some kind of distress for the defense. And I think if it was some pouting in there and being like, hey, I should be involved in these actions, and there absolutely should have been more Quickley Scottie actions, then I think, again, that's also a learning opportunity. So I do think there should be a directness in how that's handled between Darko, whoever. I mean, I don't think, unless you see a pattern of this like consistently, I don't see why, Masai or anyone would have to get involved. This can just be a quick thing between Darko and him. And yeah, I think you just move on. I mean, you got a game to get ready for tonight, so you move on quick.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a recurring thing either, right? Like Scottie typically is the dude who just takes the bull by the horns in the fourth quarter of every game, and it's fine. And didn't happen in this one. It's a shame. I think there were other sort of reasons. The Dort matchup, number one. Having Scottie go to work in his usual office as like a post hub with Chet Holmgren hanging out as a help man. Maybe not the best idea. And Darko did note afterwards they were trying to target Shai because he had 5 fouls, which I think is pretty worthwhile as well when you're in a double overtime game. If you can foul that dude out, you stand a pretty good chance of winning. And so all of these different things kind of came together. I don't think it was one thing of one player letting the team down or quitting on the team in the dying moments of the game or anything extreme like that. But certainly lots of little stuff to learn from, which again is like kind of the whole point here. We'll come back on the other side. It's been a little negative off the top. We're going to talk about what went well, because that's the thing, is lots of things went well for the Raptors in the lead up to the things that went wrong in this game. We will get into that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that is why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion with a B professionals, which make it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates rolling in. So easy in fact that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within the first 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many different hats, and you may not have the time or resources to hire. It's a time-consuming process to go through all those resumes. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. You should too. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest, whether it's big or small. Certain things can really start to get at you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. Having someone with no agenda who's just there to listen and offer insights on the things that you have going on. I want to talk to you about feeling stuff today. And look, we all feel stuff. I feel overwhelmed by the lack of the sun. Just the mere lack of the sun, that beautiful glowing orb in the sky, really gets me feeling down. It makes me feel unmotivated. It makes me feel like I don't want to do anything. That lack of vitamin D can be a real thing that makes you question everything. It is probably happening to so many people in Southern Ontario as we now live in the Pacific Northwest all of a sudden. Therapy can be different for everyone, but most of us have bigger problems than your favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Okay, continuing on here, your first listen of the day with Big V, Vivek Jacob from Sportsnet, as we dig into a very fun, very entertaining, very heartbreaking loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder as the Toronto Raptors road trip of 6 games trudges forth. Big V, some good stuff happened in this game. A 63-47 start to this game in the first half was pretty damn thrilling. The way they punched back as the Thunder made their surge, also pretty encouraging, in the fourth quarter there. Overall, what do you think worked in this game? What popped out to you as sort of the biggest sort of things to build upon from the Toronto Raptors performance in OKC?
Yeah, so I mean, the defensive scheme early in the first half, for the entire first half, absolutely worked. I thought that was really effective. I think that Quickley's playmaking again continues. I mean, overall, I think I'm still riding the high of like Quickley and Barrett adding things to this team that have been missing for quite some time.
Hell yeah.
And so
rim pressure, baby. We love it.
So yeah, Quickley, his ability to push the pace, to pull up, that's probably the thing I really enjoy the most. Part of why they were running so many Quickley portal actions was because, those opportunities where, whether it's getting switched, which at Holmgren, whether it was being able to just blow by. I think those were things that were working really well. RJ Barrett, I think, brings such a life and energy to this team. He's so forceful and in a healthy way. And, you think about the way his sort of narrative has changed from what he was as a Knick to what he's been as a Raptor. It was like forcing too much. It was, making the wrong reads, all of that. And he seems to be doing exactly the opposite. We saw some of the bad forceful stuff when he first came over, but it was still being largely outweighed by the positive, and that continues to be the case. And I feel like we're seeing less and less of the bad forceful stuff. And so I think he's getting more and more acclimated to this system. And again, the speed with which he's making decisions and just consistently, both those guys just getting downhill is probably the aspect that I enjoy the most.
Yeah, I think with RJ, there were some moments last night. A pretty tough turnover on a live dribble pass, I think, trying to hit Scottie in the corner that, went the other way. Obviously, not being able to squeeze that ball near the end to, secure possession as he falls out of bounds. That was tough. But overall,
Dort also, helped him
it a little bit
out of bounds.
Weird snap play. They're trying to call a timeout, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I don't think that's just weird basketball stuff, right? I don't think RJ did necessarily anything wrong there. You got to have the strong hands, et cetera. But, overall, having RJ back, it adds such a dynamic of like downhill ball to this team. His finishing has just been so impressive around the rim. And I was thinking about this last night. Every time he takes a shot, it feels like the logical endpoint of the sequence that led to it, right? Nothing feels like it's out of the flow. Nothing feels like it's okay, he's commandeering things now. No, it's like this action was created and executed, and it led to a very understandable RJ Barrett, whatever it's layup, whether it's roaring off a screen, whether it's a catch and shoot three, whatever it is, it's all just so within the flow. And the way he's playing off of the Quickley, Barnes, Pearl of it all. Like those four guys together, like there's a lot of synergy that can be found there. They need to work on it. Obviously, it's been a month of upheaval, which I think is another thing to consider here in terms of how things kind of broke down. Like they're still figuring this whole thing out. There has been no continuity. I would argue the last month or so has been like the least continuity a team has ever had in season. Like the number of injuries combined with the two massive roster changing trades, like it's been very strange. And so like I think it's going to come. I think there will be more unison to be found between all of those guys, and RJ just seems to fit in so easily that I don't think he's ever going to detract from that dynamic whatsoever. And yeah, he's just been fantastic. And him, Quickley, Barnes, Pirtle, that quartet, to me, there's no reason why. I tweeted this last night. There's no reason why that they can't go into the post-deadline run here and actually like play some pretty competitive, interesting basketball and win some games. Ultimately, too, like I think my bigger positive takeaway from this game is this is the exact type of game I want the Raptors playing. Close game, intense, real developmental reps. Like this is player development, right, Big V? Like having them play games that actually matter. This feels like something, getting those learning experiences against very good teams and high leverage moments. Like that's what this kind of all about, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would go with, this being the exact model. I think in terms of the Scottie involvement, I would want to see more of that in, down the stretch and into the overtime. But these are the opportunities that you would like, right? Where you see a solid defensive game plan being executed in the first half. You see Quickley getting reps. You're seeing Barrett get reps. And I think you're seeing the future a little bit, right?
Yep.
And I think that's what you want to see. So from that standpoint, absolutely. I think you can nail down the specifics a bit better. And beyond that, yeah, I think you wonder how much is being, managed from a tank perspective. Because if you zoom out, like there is that vibe of like, oh yeah, team looks good in the first half and then things just fall apart and nothing's really being done to stop the falling apart. and then you go on to lose.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel like that was an orchestrated maneuver from the top down to go lose that second half. Like, it'd be pretty stupid if it was. Here's my thing. I know everyone's horny for the tank and all that stuff, right? Like, oh, gotta get to the 5th spot. The Blazers, they can be passed. Like, I'm of the mind that right now, the top priority should be trying to play as many games like this as possible. Get into games where you're trying to win, where you're working on stuff, where you're seeing your best players for the long haul, actually build habits, build chemistry, build feel for one another. And if you win games, great. And you're pushing for the play-in, great. If you're not doing that and you're, wallowing around in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th range of the lottery, great. Let the lottery odds, which are entirely out of your control, fall where they might. Control what you can control between now and the end of the season, which is trying to actually play meaningful basketball, to build habits, to not just piss away a third of a season because the possibility of being the 5th overall pick is there. And I just think that's got to be priority number one. And the rest will figure out when they figure it out, right? If they are in the play-in, awesome. Like I think where they finish is basically irrelevant at this point.
Yeah, I wasn't saying it from a philosophy perspective. I was just saying that when you look at it from the outside, if you were to look at it from a neutral, it would be like, oh, this is a bad team that showed up for the first half, and then when things started to fall apart, it just completely fell apart. And on the other side, you look at it from a Thunder perspective, you say, okay, this is a team that looked like, thought they were going to have it easy against a bad team. and then really had to crank it up, and then came out with a W.
Sure. And hey, if they like lose all of these games down the stretch that they play like this, fine, whatever. That's fine. But I guess this is me just sort of imploring to not sort of lose games on purpose. I'm not saying you are out here going fire up the tank machine and all that stuff, but I just you see where the fan base is at. I see where people want to be. I see people like lusting after the 5th overall pick. I just feel like the lottery odds are so out of your control and so volatile, and there's no guarantee you're keeping your pick anyway. And so play out the season with the guys you have. You already know worst case you have 3 picks in the first 31 of this draft. Like you'll find some dudes, and if you need to trade up, you'll trade up or whatever. I'm just like so unconcerned about it. It's like a nice thing. It's like, oh, I don't care where they finish. They could finish 12th in the East, right where they are now. They could finish 10th, and I would not care one way or another. It's fine. Like, just play some games like this, and I'll be a happy camper, baby. We'll come back on the other side, round it out with the good, the bad, and the to close things out. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our pals over at FanDuel, the #1 sports book in all of North America. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel. And if you're like me, the Super Bowl is something where, I mean, I don't really watch the Super Bowl. I hang out. I'll maybe put some money on basketball games that day. But if you're like basically every other person, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets on things like the national anthem and how long that's going to run and who's going to score the first points and will there be a safety and things like that. Maybe have a little action with your people at your Super Bowl party with all through FanDuel. It's that easy. You go check it out. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end your season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel is also got bets for you, which is, who's going to score a touchdown, how many points are going to be scored, et cetera, so much more. New customers can join today and get $200 in bonus bets if the first bet of $5 or more wins. Again, that's $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook of the NFL. Closing out the show here with the good, the bad, and the way we close out every Raptors recap episode of the podcast here. Thing we liked, thing we didn't like, I think that's got us a little intrigued from the game that took place the night before. Again, we're skipping the Rockets game. Nothing from that godforsaken event. All Thunder related stuff here. Big V, let's begin. What you got for your good?
My good is RJ, man.
Yeah.
I think having him come back after an absence and play the way he did, and I just love the sort of take the bull by the horns intensity that he brings, and I love the force with which he attacks the rack. We saw that the 3-point shot drop off for a bit before the injury, so it was nice to see him nail a couple of triples in this one. But yeah, again, that ability to get downhill, to get to the rack. Overall, I think his decision making was good. You were right to point out that still a couple of mistakes in there, but overall, I'm loving what I'm seeing from RJ. And again, that shift where I think when the trade happened, you were thinking, okay, can he just play well enough to maybe be another trade down the line?
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, like he could be a real piece of this core.
My good. I was going to go RJ as well, but I've kind of used my RJ thoughts already today. So I'm going to go Thad Young, the Chet Holmgren stopper. Man, this month of Thad has been so bloody fun. They actually won that trade by a mile. And in fact, won that trade so decidedly over the Spurs that it also makes the Jakob Poeltl trade more of a win. This is my take now. Like you got Thad and Jakob Poeltl for only 2 first-round picks. Like, okay, man, swindling the Spurs, this garbage franchise, giving up these 2 superstar bigs, unreal. Yeah, just Thad rules. I wonder if they're actually like maybe going to get something for him at the deadline now. If like some team needs some sort of sage, wise, pass throwing Chet Holmgren stopper to come in. Hey, lots of West teams could use a Chet stopper. Yeah, just an absolute blast to see him outgunned by like 6 inches and just being old and wise and giving Chet some problems. The best.
Thad,
Love Thad
like
Young. This month has been
that
so damn fun.
Thad shutting down a young guy in the playoffs would be the most like YMCA like in the playoffs thing to happen. Like
More YMCA than when he crossed over Joel Embiid and hit a pull-up midi in the playoffs. Oh,
hey man,
he's
I've never seen a Joel Embiid at the Y. Like I don't think I would have ever gone back.
Oh man. All right, let's go to the bad. What you got for your bad in this one?
I think for me it'd probably be just the lack of Scottie Quickley actions.
Yeah, sure.
I think when I look at Darko's comments after the game as well, and saying, "Hey, we were targeting the matchups where there was foul trouble, and we could maybe take advantage there." There was only one real guy in foul trouble for the Thunder, and that was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And you've also got to acknowledge that Shai is the superstar in the league now. That the chances of him getting called for that sixth foul
Sure.
are pretty slim.
He's also like an excellent defender too. So like, maybe going at him I mean, like, Quickly was getting where he wanted to go, but worth noting that as well.
So I think just the lack of Scottie Quickley actions down the stretch. Again, when we have this whole development conversation, that should be the bread and butter in terms of the future of this franchise, right? So I think the absence of that I'll probably chalk up as a bad.
My bad. A lot of Dennis in this game, man. This was a not very good Dennis Schroder game. Minus 23 in a game where they blew a 23-point lead. That stands out and slaps you in the face as a number. And I just thought like way too much of calling his own number. He clearly was not having any luck finishing from 2-point range in this game. 2 of 10. Chet Holmgren gave him problems. They're just a big, nasty team on the interior, right? And so like when you got Jalen Williams in there and whatnot, big for Dennis Schroder to deal with at the very least. And so, yeah, not my favorite Schroder game. He's been awesome off the bench. I think they leaned on him a little bit too much in this one. And, I think if you're going to get upset about the hierarchy on possessions, quickly run possessions, not really going to be something I get mad about. Schroder run possessions in high leverage moments. Look at the big picture here. Like this is probably a stopgap guard for a couple of years and not someone who's going to be on the long-term good version of this team. So, maybe funnel a little bit that away. But then maybe that's where you get more Scottie involved, is less Dennis. So that was my bad. Let's go to the what you got for your
For my I was really just gonna bring up Darko and say,
sure.
Obviously we know he can be a great individual development guy. And I think that's why he was brought in. But I think we're also gonna get a taste of how he manages these opportunities now, where you have these close games and you want to get as many possessions as possible for Scottie, Quickley, Barrett, and then kind of move down from there. And that's where kind of leads into what you said about Dennis Schroder. And it's like, hey, why is Schroder getting all these opportunities? And like, can you put that relationship aside? We get that there's a great friendship there and kinship, and I think you've really just got to prioritize the development. And I agree, there's going to be moments where they also have to earn it. But I don't think Dennis Schroder did much to earn it in this one.
No. I would say not. Yeah.
And so that's my going forward, right? It's like, and we say this all the time with assistant coaches, right? It's a big move from there to the head coaching position. And he has been very successful at working with an individual player over a course of a period and bringing them along. And players have spoken very highly about that. Desmond Bane being at the top of the list. And so I think now you've got a lot more mouths to feed when you're the head coach.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
For sure. Yeah, I think it's a notable thing. Any first-year coach's first year is like an ongoing, I'd argue. Like, it's a lot to learn about what they're all about. I think I've been mostly encouraged by a lot of what we've seen from Darko, but yeah, the sort of dependence on Dennis, the sort of strange late game stuff once in a while, like, yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. No doubt. A worthy. My is just forgot the deadlines this week. With the Raptors getting their big business out of the way, it's like, oh yeah, 3 days. There's more stuff to probably come here. And I guess the guy who figures into this conversation is Bruce Brown, who did not seem much up to it last night, I would say. A little joggy on defense, one might argue. He didn't hit any of his shots. It's just not his best game as a Raptor by any means. I still am of the mind that, a guy like Bruce Brown is a perfect type of guy to keep around if you want to. If you're just trading him for the sake of trading him, you shouldn't. But fascinated to see where that one goes before Thursday, and what happens. Does that open up Jordan Nwora minutes? If because Nwora obviously was out of the conversation last night. How does the dust settle this week? And I guess Gary Trent Jr. is also a big part of this as well. He's been playing pretty damn well of late, and that starting lineup continues to be frustrating in his own Gary Trent Jr. like way. But just the deadline being this close, it being this quiet is bizarre. And I kind of frankly have no idea what to expect from this week. Like, maybe they just offload one guy. Maybe it's 3 guys they offload. It seems like Chris Boucher is not really part of the plans anymore. We'll see there. It's a weird. Any quick thoughts on the deadline and sort of what's looming this week on your end?
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting to see the clarity on whether it's Gary, Otto, Chris Boucher, who am I forgetting? Bruce Brown. And yeah, I mean, we didn't really say much about Bruce Brown, but I feel like he's kind of in a space where he is ready to move on. And so I would like to see that happen. And hopefully, you can continue to set things up for the future as well as possible. And so I think that's, that quartet is probably what I'm looking to see over the next few days, but we'll see what actually materializes. Who knows? Maybe with a guy like Bruce there thinking, maybe a draft day package,
I've been saying this, man. There's opportunity cost to just moving him for the first thing you can get, when there's lots of other things you could potentially move him for in the summer in maybe more additive trades than just sell-off trades to contenders. We'll see. Right. Obviously, it depends on what you can get back this week, but yeah.
I would like those uncertain vibes to go, though. So I feel like the more move on, the better. And clearing house in terms of those vibes would be a positive.
Sure. I mean, you get through the deadline and he's untraded. I'm sure the uncertainty goes away a little bit as well, right? Like, maybe there's uncertainty about the long haul, but I think it's at least a signal of, oh, hey, like, we want to be part of this mix and see what we got down the stretch. If that is in fact the case, it does seem like it's tracking towards him getting moved. But I do think one way or another, trades or not, Thursday will be a salve for all of those waiting and dreaming and hoping for the day where there's just like clarity as to who is on this basketball team for the last third of the season. We'll leave it there. There's another game tonight, Raptors Pelicans. That'll be fun. The Raptors tend to get waxed by the Pelicans based on recent history, so fingers crossed it doesn't go that way. But yeah, we'll get into that on tomorrow's show. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people, Big V?
Usual stuff. I did a piece on All-Star snubs for Sportsnet. I will have deadline day winners and losers coming up on Thursday. And so you can check all my general NBA stuff at Sportsnet. You can check out my cricket stuff at Cricket Canada. And besides that, you can follow me on Twitter at Vivek Jacob.
Everyone go do that. Find me at Woodley Sean. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, etc. Full slate of shows this week, and maybe even more than that if stuff goes down to the deadline and we need some bonus content in there. So back to normal after a couple of weird weeks with moving and COVID, etc., etc. It's been a bit of a hard one over here, but appreciate y'all hanging it through and sticking with the show and rocking with it nonetheless. And with that, we'll leave it there. We'll come back tomorrow, talk about Raptors Pelicans in the meantime. Thanks so much for hanging. Bye-bye. I'm 0 for 3 since I started taking that shot over the head to close the show. It's really disappointing. We'll get it one day.